I don't have a bit for this. Do you got a bit for this?
I'm just in love with Rebecca Hall. Like, I don't know if you've ever seen her in an interview or anything, but she's British, in case you don't know. When she's not playing a character, when she's just her own self, she is classy and charming as fuck.
I
She's
believe
amazing. And also just one of those actors that does not get enough credit.
Oh yeah,
Like, she is fucking fantastic in everything she's in, and this movie is no exception. She is the whole movie depends on her performance, and she kills it.
oh yeah.
Front to back, she kills it.
So this was this was the last movie on our catch up list, Night House, which is like, I don't want to say indie horror movie, but like lesser known horror movies are out there that it's kind of horror in the loosest of definitions.
Gonna give a quick little back end to this because this is actually
It came out like last year, I want to say, but like
pull this off
now.
because this director is someone that a lot of people don't know, but I have actually been a fan of for a while. David Buckner, or David Bruckner, has just done a couple of things before this. Mm-hmm. I still remember when he came out with The Signal. He actually just directed one of the 3 segments in the movie. When it first came out, I didn't realize that it was directed by 3 different directors. But The Signal is one of my like weird little indie classics that I really enjoyed. Came out in 2007. But the movie that he directed completely on his own after that was The Ritual, which is a Netflix release about these 4 dudes who go on a trip into the woods. They're British, and it really just goes off the rails and ends pretty interestingly. I had mixed feelings about it, particularly the end, but overall I really enjoyed it. Okay. He directed a segment in Southbound and in VHS. And then he is going to be directing the upcoming Hellraiser reboot.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned that. That caught my attention.
Yeah, I have had my eye on that for a while, and I'm very, very excited. I just like his style. He has a very interesting, different approach towards horror movies that is, it seems much more connected to the characters and what they're going through than what a lot of movies manage to pull off. So when I first went to see this, I didn't realize that this was directed by him because I thought the next thing he was working on was Hellraiser. So watching it, I found out after I finished watching it that it was directed by him, and I was really, 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 I was like, oh shit, that explains it. Because this movie it's hard to describe. You can't go into it expecting like a straight up horror movie.
Like, I kind of put this in the same category as like The Gift. I mean, with Outsider.
Yeah. No, I get what you mean. That doesn't really have any kind of supernatural element to it, but
I mean, like, yeah,
it has that same
to it, but it's more
it
like
has the same creepiness to it.
There's more of an aura of uncomfortableness that's very character driven. There's a larger point than spooky that it very clearly wants to make.
Yeah.
And like Gift movie, I fucking loved. So this is definitely movies up my alley. So in that respect, I did walk away really enjoying this movie. Although it is a really bad time, I found out, to need to use the bathroom a couple times. Because I made a mistake when I watched this slight tangent, because I went to a dine-in theater but nearby. It's a fairly new one around here. I was like, all right, cool, I'm here, I'll get some food. And apparently it did not sit with me well. So there's a couple parts like, oh shit, literally. But there's also something really spooky going on right now, and I want to stay for that. So there was one point I had just like quickly under my shirt wiki the plot just so I can catch up to what I missed.
Oh man. That's sad. That's too bad.
I caught the most important bits, but still, it made me chuckle to myself a little bit. But
yeah.
Anyway,
well, the thing that makes this movie really compelling is that it's not really so much a horror movie as an exploration of grief.
It's more like a psychological thriller, if anything, or psychological drama. I would count.
Well, I feel like it's more of a character study than anything.
Yeah, that too.
The thing about it that's really fascinating for me is that it is an exploration of grief and depression and loss, while at the same time bringing a supernatural and like occult kind of theme on top of that. And there are a lot of things in the movie that are straight up metaphors, down to the overall supernatural concept going on behind the scenes, which we'll get to in more detail later. But the way that this kind of stacks up the pieces, it doesn't spell a lot of things out directly.
No.
But it's the things that it does are the things that it needs to. And then the other elements on top of that are really just cleverly placed dressing that you can like figure out on your own if you want. But the core elements are really well defined. And it does a really great job of using like dream logic in some of the things, because one of the themes throughout the movie is that the main character doesn't know if she's dreaming or not. For several sequences. And as it goes through those sequences, like there are sequences where you know it's a dream, but also that you know that it's not entirely just a figment of her imagination. Like something
else is going on. Yeah.
Something, she's seeing something that's a clue to something else. Mm-hmm. And it just puts these pieces one on top of another. And I don't know, there's a fascinating through line to it that in the end ends up being an even bigger, more elegant metaphor for depression and loss and grief and things like that. And I just, it's astounding to me how many levels this movie works on and how adeptly it managed to take these themes and work them into a functional concept that works as a straight up just like ghost movie kind of deal.
Yeah, I mean, it knows how to use the tropes of ghosts for what they're intended to be, which are echoes of the past, and the memories and what they leave behind. Like that is the inherent purpose of ghost stories in their truest form. So it's kind of nice to see them taken back to those roots, as opposed to like spooky ghosts. But like this one uses the trope of ghosts for their intended purpose. They're a constant reminder of loss, of pain, of everything, like the massive hole they leave behind, how much you still miss them, and all these kind of themes that play into it, which also plays into like suicidal ideation and depression, and again all these and the questions that come up when you are a widower of somebody who does that, or just in somebody in the same orbit as someone who does that. There's a lot of lingering questions that come up. And this movie does a great job exploring all those themes. I will say one thing, this isn't really negative on the movie, but it does reinforce my annoyance / hatred for teachers. Not for what they do. They do great, important work. But I have never worked with a more vindictive, catty group of bitches as teachers. And I'm going to get a lot of hate for saying that. But my God, no teacher in this fucking classroom has any tact whatsoever and just say the most inappropriate things.
Hang on. Let's be fair. Any teacher worth their salt will own that entirely, because they have to deal with kids all the time. All of the shit that parents talk about, like how hard it is to be a parent and how hard it is to discipline your kids and deal with them. Teachers have to deal with like 30 of them at a time for half of the day, and they don't even have that much power to discipline them in the way that their parents don't.
Again, like, I'm not knocking what they do. They do important work.
No, I'm not knocking what they do. I'm saying that a good teacher will understand how this can drive them a little crazy and will absolutely own that as just a hazard of the job. Like
I don't know. That being said, I've worked with a fair amount of teachers back when I was a behavioral therapist, and I can tell you,
how dare you?
I can tell you, they fucking have the emotional intelligence of a fucking teenager. Because
some of them are barely not teenagers.
I mean, like, I met teachers I liked, but more often than not, they will they are the most gossipy group of bitches, and they will say they'll be nice to your face. You can straight up say, "Hey, if I do anything out of line, let me know," and they'll go, "Okay," and then they'll report you the next day. You know, and I have never
just
met
go behind the back and be like, "Fuck that guy."
Like, I have never met a more stab you in the back level or persona than I have with teachers, especially kindergarten teachers, because they get jealous.
Yeah, that's an interesting.
I had a teacher that reported me because the kids liked me too much.
Michael, yes. Focus on the movie.
Working out some old issues anyway.
I know, but the whole teacher thing is barely a part of this movie.
I know, but the reason I'm bringing this up is because, and I went on a tangent because I clearly have some unresolved issues with that. Is the bar scene, because get
on with it.
Okay, shut up. So Rebecca Hall is the teacher in this movie, and by the way, I do gotta give credit to Sarah Goldberg, who I'm glad to see is getting more work. Who's also very good in this movie, because I was like, oh, cool, it's a girl from Barry. I like her. Yeah. I like her. I'm glad she's getting more work. But meanwhile, they see a bunch of us are gonna go out drinking. You want to come with us? And they just says so your dead husband. Oh wow, all right. Although on that same scene, I did hear little John Mulaney in my head.
Why?
Because there's a part there where they're Rebecca Hall, and she's drinking, and then Sarah's like, "Are you okay? Is everything okay?" And then you can just look at Rebecca Hall, and I heard John Mulaney in her head where she said "Well, here goes nothing. Do you guys believe in ghosts?"
All right.
So, and then they proceeds to pile on heaps of inappropriate questions, to which Sarah Goldberg is the only one going, "Hey guys, maybe let's not."
Let's back off a little bit, huh? Let's not. She's going through a time.
But for some reason, these people just get no social cues from that whatsoever. So that's why it was a little triggering for me in that very specific way.
Let's also be fair. She needed to get some of that out, and she took advantage of that situation to be like, fine, let's talk about it. You want to talk about it? Let's do it. Do you believe in ghosts? What?
Rewatch that scene where she holds a glass to her head and tell me you don't hear John Mulaney going, "Well, here goes.
Do you believe in ghosts?
Do you believe in ghosts?" And then Sarah with me goes, "Yes." And then John Mulaney's back in my head and going, "Which is the right answer," which is the best answer. Anyway, that was a little thing. But that bit aside, I'm talking a lot about a single scene. The rest of the movie is really good, then plays off from there. And it also kind of plays this kind of mystery as to what is the real deal with this husband, because clearly he was having secrets, and it's not just her being paranoid and trying to justify is not the right word, but explain what happened.
She needs to know what's going on. She knows that he was hiding something, and she's going through his shit, and she's trying to figure out what his deal was, and she finds books about the occult with notes in them and shit, and so it just goes into this weird little rabbit hole. She's like, what the fuck? And so she starts to explore this stuff, but it's handled in a really interesting way where clearly she's onto something, but of course her best friend is telling her don't fucking do this to yourself, you need to stop. But that's something that I honestly find infuriating a lot of the time with people, because a lot of people, if they haven't been through something that terrible, they don't understand that you need to see it through. And whether or not it fucking drives you insane, whether or not it fucking kills you, you can get to a point where it puts your whole livelihood at risk. And whether or not that's, a healthy thing is, you can debate that all you want. But as the main character of this movie, I found her being the main character, not me, but I found her motivations to be really understandable. Yeah. And I found it really irritating when people kept telling her to like let it go and just like chill and all that shit. And as spookier stuff starts to happen to her in the house, it's like, make no mistake, it's a slow fucking movie. It is not a fast-paced movie. It takes its time. It's meant to build the character and the suspense, and it delivers some really effective creepy moments. And what I have to say is the most fucking jarring jump scare I have ever experienced in a movie. And I think it's saying something when I say, as someone who fucking hates jump scares, I respected it. I really respected the shit out of that jump scare, because it wasn't something where, like, you know, you're walking down a hallway and like, ooh, something's gonna pop out. Like, oh, like it's doing the very basic suspense, like Resident Evil, a zombie's gonna pop through a window or some shit. Like this came in the middle of a scene that seems to be like something completely different. Like absolutely just was not connected to that scene.
Yeah.
But not only is it a really jarring transition to the next scene, but that transition makes sense within the context of the movie.
It does.
And the sheer, like, visceral, instinctual adrenaline rush of that moment doesn't feel gratuitous. It feels like a genuine expression of just how fucking terrifying the situation that this character is in is. And I respected that a lot. I really respected that. Now, granted, literally a couple of minutes later, there's a jump scare that I did not appreciate at all, because it was just like a cheap, loud noise playing on top of something just popping into frame that didn't make any noise. You know, I don't like those. But this one, the jump scare that really got to me, that I really enjoyed, was the sound, and all of it was part of the movie, was part of the scene. Bless you.
Thank you.
So I respected the shit out of that. And it's like, I can't remember the last time I respected a jump scare. I got to respect that.
For sure. And there was a lot of very curious visual designs and decisions as well, especially as the movie starts leaning more into the supernatural. And what ultimately leads to the climax, which I won't like give away here, obviously. But just some of the ways they kind of visually interpreted that concept was very, very interesting and very creative. And I was like, okay, especially when they kind of first do the reveal of it, was when a person's like, oh, that's kind of clever. That's pretty clever.
It's clever and also oddly unnerving. Like that's really effectively unnerving. So yeah, I like that a lot. But yeah, and I think this movie does a really good job of handling some really intense subjects, some really like sensitive subjects, and it does so with a grace and a sensitivity that and empathy that I think is necessary when you're handling things like this. And at the same time turned it into a ghost story that was really compelling, and by the end of it was really genuinely like intense and like, if not scary, then kind of unnerving in that way that horror movies should be.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
And I really enjoyed it. It was really a pleasant surprise.
Yeah. I kind of went this movie kind of expecting nothing. Like I was like, well, it's on the list, I'll go watch it. And I know you'd already seen it, so I was like, okay, I wasn't really planning to watch this, but see, this is Paw Patrol, so I'm gonna watch this.
You made the right choice.
And by the way, before anyone asks, no, I'm not gonna review Paw Patrol. It's a movie for little kids. The fuck am I gonna say about it?
It's propaganda for toddlers.
Yeah, that's a whole other debate. That's also kind of another reason I'm avoiding it, because I just don't want to have that discussion.
Sure. But anyway,
but the point I'm trying to make, is like, this is a superior show. Okay, granted, that's a low bar. Let me think a better way to phrase that. This is a smart, intelligent take on the horror genre that does the topic with respect. Maybe some misinterpretation you can make on the subject, on kind of like the final couple twists. There's one part I'm like, I know also how the movie wants me to interpret it, and I'm probably overthinking it.
Yeah.
But there is kind of a squishy way you can interpret this if you really want to.
Yeah, sure.
That being said, visually it's interesting. The performances are all great. It's paced well enough. The mystery is set up well enough. You want to see it to its conclusion. And where it ultimately goes with it is unique. And I can safely say I haven't seen those visual tricks done on a story like this before. So top marks.
Yeah. All right.
I don't think I'm ever gonna watch it again, but for the one time I watched it, I was like, I got something interesting out of it. That's all I can ask for, or something like this.
Yeah.
Which, after watching Don't Breathe 2, is a breath of fresh fucking air.
Yeah, it does something original and interesting with a real topic, with a lot of empathy and skill and visual flair, and it's well constructed and well plotted and phenomenally acted. Once again, just to tie this all off, Rebecca Hall is a fucking treasure. And she acts the fuck out of this movie, and she deserves every accolade possible for it. I just unbelievable.
For sure.
So yeah, with that being said, spoiler.
Yeah, let's do it.
Spoilers. All right. So where do we want to start?
The body's in the basement.
The visual flare?
Was that?
Do you want to start with the visuals?
Yeah, let's start with the visuals. So
that was neat.
Yeah, that was a pretty cool concept. So the whole catalyst of this is the suicide note that Rebecca Hall's husband leaves behind, which is just like, you're right, there is nothing.
Not the visuals.
Well, it leads into the visuals.
Okay. Well, we could just say like the ghost shows up as like
well, because like it comes back in a very literal way, right?
Sure.
Which is, it's like you're safe now.
Nothing is after you.
Yeah.
Fuck, I didn't even think about that. That's cool.
So that's why I'm bringing that up.
All right. I'll give that to you.
All right, thank you. I'll take it. Yeah. So then the very much you think like, oh, they're talking about like life after death, because her Rebecca Hall thinks she died like 4 years ago, and
she had a really horrible car accident and like died for 4 minutes.
Yeah, so like she was resuscitated, and apparently since then she has this haunting presence called Nothing that's been following her ever since, and it like infected her husband basically. And because it infected her husband, it started like basically trying to convince him to kill her so she can go back. That's the literal definition of the plot.
But you got to work on your storytelling skills, buddy. Come on.
I have an award in storytelling right here. I'm not my top notch.
Really?
Yes.
Where? Let me see that.
I literally won an award for storytelling.
From where? Oh, nice, dude. Good job.
Thank you. So ha.
I wanted to be really snarky right there. like, I just wanted to be like, well, you're out of practice.
I'm working off the cuff here, okay?
I know. But no, look, the thing about it is that since she died, she felt this. It's not just this nothing following her. It's like she's been like super depressed since then because of the nothingness that she felt after that. And the thing is that that depression and everything, she was actually worried that her depression had affected her husband to the point where he killed himself. And that, as a person with depression, is something very real that people who have mental illness worry about. You know, like it's the fact that if you are so depressed and such a downer to be around sometimes, why wouldn't people just go and be with someone else? Like, for all the redeeming factors that you have, like why wouldn't they just find someone else who has all those same redeeming factors? Like, and it's something that, you know, we wrestle with a lot.
Yeah.
Me particularly right now, like that's part of why this movie hit home. And it's this whole thing where she really, like, the fucked up thing about it is that on a certain level that is true, but it's not her actual depression. It is this specter from the other side, which wanted to keep her, and when she escaped, followed her back into the world of the living.
Yes.
And has been trying to get her to come back. So it's like the temptation of death, and like the sweet embrace of nothingness, the void, so to speak. And the way that it tries to do this is to basically try to drive her husband insane and get him to kill her so that she'll be returned to the other side so he can actually have her to keep.
Yeah.
And it's such a crazy concept, which simultaneously works on multiple levels for as metaphors for, you know, suicidal ideation and stuff like that. And like the twist that comes later on when she's trying to figure out why, you know, her husband was like flirting with and seducing women like her, is she finds out that he was basically killing them to send back as tribute to try to fool the presence into thinking they were her so that he could save her.
Yeah.
Which is really dark and fucked up and not exactly a redeeming thing, but really tragic at the very least.
Yeah.
And I appreciated that kind of fucking like level of tragedy to it. And the way that this monster manifests in real life is in negative spaces,
which is again very interesting.
I've never seen something like this done in a movie before.
Yeah, that's what I was talking about earlier when I said like that is a very curious choice, and the way they visualize it into a literal being and the many different ways they creatively create the shape of that is like, that is extremely clever. Well done.
There are points in the movie where you don't really quite see it, and then you spot where it is, and then it turns and looks at her, and you're like, oh no, like really effective. And when you get later into the movie where she basically goes into like this other side kind of world where it's inhabited by these hauntings of her husband and the memories of him having to kill these women and this presence chasing her through this version of the house. Things in the house rearrange to make this shape of a man like looking at her and following her and stuff. And it's a fascinating approach. It is really compelling.
Yeah.
And it does really interesting things with perspective and cinematography. And it could be like, it skirts the line with being a cheesy effect, but the way that the movie pulls it off, coupled with the actual seriousness of the delivery and the quality of the execution, it works.
Yeah. I don't really have anything to add to that.
Let's talk about the parts that you were squishy about, because I felt like the final sequence was a little overlong, but at the same time, I understood what they were trying to do, and I appreciated the fact that she was basically taken to the brink of suicide and then decided to stay.
Yeah, which I appreciate that as a metaphor. I think it's more like when you take the metaphor a little too far in terms of how you analyze it.
Yeah,
that's where I was kind of feeling squishy about, because on one hand, if we're assuming nothing is like suicidal ideation or the longing for death or do like an escape or anything like that, or the depression that comes from like just those kind of experiences, if we take it into that account and we assume that she infected her husband, that kind of implies that kind of suicide ideation is contagious.
Well, but that's the thing.
And that's what I'm saying. Like, it's not. I know it's not what they're going for, but that's like in a way you can interpret it.
Well, but that's the thing. It's the fact that I liked the fact that it started off with the idea that she had the genuine fear that, you know, it could have been her fault. It could have been her suicidal ideation that infected her husband and made him kill himself. But when she finds out that it is actually a supernatural force that is maliciously coming after her, and therefore it's not actually her fault. It's not actually in the movie realm her depression and her suicidal thoughts. If anything, it wasn't even like the thing that's making her feel that way isn't even technically a part of her. It's this thing that she brought back with her from this trauma. So I liked the idea that kind of thing isn't technically you. It's just something that you are subjected to, which is kind of an important thing to remember when you're dealing with things like PTSD and everything. They are technically inside of you, they're a part of you, but they are not like you. You know what I mean? It is a separate thing from you. It is something that happened to you. It is something that you live with.
Just for the sake of playing devil's advocate. Oh, go ahead.
Huh?
I said, just for the sake of playing devil's advocate, in that same framework that you just presented, can you then also make the argument that would also imply that trauma is transferable in a way?
If you were taking it as a strict metaphor,
but
I don't take it as that. I don't think that, because when you're talking about something like trauma isn't really transferable unless you inflict that trauma on someone else. Like if you are abused a certain way emotionally, and then you in turn, instead of healing it and learning to deal with it and making sure that you don't do it to someone else, just follow the emotional baggage and take it out on other people, that is transferable. But that's not what she did. That's not the character she was. Yeah. It was literally a supernatural specter that took the form of that kind of thing, and she thought it was that thing. And she technically does have to live with that feeling and that thing. And it gets kind of blurry in terms of where it separates the metaphor from the actual supernatural being in the movie.
I think that's where I'm trying to find the disconnect.
But at the same time, I think that the main point is that to argue that it infected the other person, you would have to go with the through line. Like, that doesn't work much further than the fact that it's a supernatural creature trying to pull you back. And if it manifested as an actual demon, that it might do that. Because sure, you could follow the thread of like, I was depressed and suicidal, so my husband killed himself. But then you would also have to take it to the further conclusion of like, and he also became a serial killer.
Yeah.
So there's that point where it's there's that extra step that they put in there, which makes it clearly in the realm of fantasy. It's fantastical. It's definitely too far. The idea of the mirror house, I loved that concept. But I think that there's enough in here to relate to very real emotional difficulties that people have, while also separating it enough to have the kind of more intense elements live comfortably within the realm of a demon or ghost story.
Okay, I can follow that logic. Yeah, so like that's what I said. Like I
think that it can do both.
Yeah, like I know, like that's what's case like one of those. I'm probably thinking too much about this, but like I can see where you can take in that direction. I know it's not what it is. I know it's not what they're going for. But I think like even though I agree with you, it is an unstable argument. You can still make an argument for it nonetheless. I
also don't think this movie is the kind that will be taken seriously enough to have a potentially negative effect in that way.
I don't think it would affect anyone's decisions in that way. That being said, for me, it's taking on a serious topic. I can see that part of it being viewed seriously.
I don't know. As someone who deals with those kinds of things mentally, like I appreciated the idea of taking these concepts and turning them into a monster, like a literal monster.
Yeah.
I appreciated externalizing these things and separating them from the main character's persona and having them be separate entities, with her fighting it as something outside of herself, which worked as a demon, but also had threads of being a metaphor for her own mental illness. And in that sense, I think that the threads are easy enough to separate. And I've seen, like, considering what some movies we've seen have done when handling similar content, I'm really okay with this.
For sure.
I think it toes the line just well enough, and I think that it has enough sensitivity for it to handle it like that. And the big thing for me, because I had a feeling that this moment was coming up,
Mm-hmm.
but the way that the movie filmed it and the way that they did the reveal, uh, the "I'm not Owen" line,
Yeah.
that I saw that coming not too far ahead of time. I saw it coming around the beginning of that scene. I was like, "Oh, this doesn't feel right."
Yeah.
And and taking that as a metaphor, where you think that your grief is connecting you to the person, but the grief is not that person. The grief is this separate monster that is eating you alive.
Okay.
And it's using the form of that person to
Yeah.
basically trick you into staying in that mode. It's a trap. Like I just like that was so interesting
Yeah.
as as just a concept for a movie to attempt. I really respected it. I really respected it.
Yeah, you've clearly given this movie more thought than I have. That's a very good point.
I'm literally this is just how I related to the movie. Like I haven't really
For
thought
sure.
about it that much. This is just how I feel. Like
And that's great, and I love that. I think that's a very good point. That is definitely an interesting extra layer to add on to it. I wish I had something equally intelligent to add to that, but I don't.
I mean, I think to add something like with this depth to it, you would have to like be a lot more depressed and suicidal. So
which
it's
I'm grateful
probably
not to be right now.
yeah, right. So there's that.
It's kind of like when I wrote the Mr. Miracle script because I like first time I started writing that stuff down, I was in a massive like depression, suicidal funk,
Oh God.
which is why I understood that book very clearly at that moment. uh,
Yeah. No, we should definitely put a content warning at the beginning of this video talking
I'll put it in
about
the description.
yeah. Well, no, put it in the video, like flag it in the video as a title card or something.
Yeah, okay, I can do that.
Like content warning, conversations about suicidal ideation and stuff. Like I didn't expect this much of the conversation to be centered around that.
Yeah,
And I know that I have certain friends where if they watched it without a warning, they might be kind of upset. So
I can understand that. Yeah, that's easy enough for me to add on. I can do that. I have to go
but
back and remove the information on where exactly I got the reward from anyway, so I can just add that on while I'm at it. Like, oh, I don't want that
yeah,
information on the internet. Anyway.
um but yeah, so the this movie was handled with the care and empathy that I think it needed to pull off the concept that it did. Because this kind of movie in the hands of a less talented director and writers would have been an insensitive shit show.
I respect any ghost story that understands very literally what a ghost story is supposed to be about.
Yeah.
And does it in a way that captures the difficult emotions that come with it.
Yeah.
So for just on that
And
aspect
this
alone,
movie,
yeah, like apropos of nothing else we've discussed, but just on that alone, this movie gets a recommendation for me. But you include that with everything else we've discussed. Yeah, there's a lot to this film.
in a very weird way, clearly not nearly as devastating, but in a weird way, I'm reminded vaguely of The Father.
Oh God, The Father is a ghost story in a sense.
In a sense, but like if you think about like the way that it's constructed and how it explores the themes, like there is a kind of it's a very different movie, but I kind of feel like connection between the two. Like I might want to do a double feature with them if I just wanted to leave, you know, the people I'm watching it with devastated.
I was gonna say like
it's not gonna be a fun movie night, I'll tell you that.
like that's a fucking downer of a day, dude. Like I remember you and I both getting out of The Father, just an emotional wreck.
Oh no, I remember getting out of it and just needing a cigarette and texting you and being like, you need to watch this. but be ready to be fucking devastated. Like, I'm just having to stand by my car in silence, thinking, like, I can't get in my car yet. I need to wait.
Oh man.
And then you went and watched it like 2 days later, and you texted me and you were like, yeah, I have some feelings right now. Yeah, no, it was serious.
That's how, if you guys have watched the review and that, you know how that went.
Yeah, that got personal. This one,
yeah, it did
in some ways. But yeah, I appreciate a good movie that.
I was like, thank God that hasn't bitten me in the ass yet. I haven't gotten a concerned phone call from a family member yet, so I know they haven't watched it.
Give it time. It's on the internet. It's written in ink, you know. But yeah, I'm weirdly reminded of it in the sense that it took a very difficult to handle concept and approached it in a way that was kind of surreal, and kind of used the medium of film to construct a very different kind of approach to it. I mean, The Father to me very much felt like a horror movie in a lot of ways.
It was horrifying, for sure.
Yeah, but it's like an emotional horror. It is a psychological horror. It is, it feels like that. And while this is more of a straight up supernatural horror, it has a lot of elements of that in it. And I have to respect it in a similar way. So
cool. Well, I don't have anything to add to that. I think you hit the nail on the head. So yeah, final thoughts you want to throw in for Night House?
I will give up everything I have to marry Rebecca Hall if she would ever have me.
Well, apparently you got to just make a weird, like kinky voodoo doll in a house in the woods somewhere.
Oh, don't be disrespectful. That's not voodoo. Voodoo
Whatever
has
the hell it
roots,
is.
Michael. Don't turn this into some weird kink thing, Michael. She's a classy lady. She deserves respect. Nothing but respect for her. God damn, she's amazing.
Okay. Apparently, the Rebecca Hall Reddit page is going to show up there like, kill this man. Anyway, disrespectful to Rebecca Hall.
Hardcore celebrity crush. Just one of those people I could not possibly have a bad thing to say about ever. Just fucking love her. Just
we know where he won the storytelling award. We can find him. Sorry. Anyway, tangent. But yeah, Rebecca Hall's amazing. Good movie overall. I enjoyed it. I don't even know what's out.
Hellraiser.
Yeah, Hellraiser should be interesting. I don't even know what's out right now. We're gonna find out.
Apparently the Hellraiser movie is also being written by the guys who wrote this movie. It's going to be directed by the same guy, written by the same guys. So that's going to be fascinating. We'll see.
Candyman's out tomorrow.
Oh shit! Yes, dibs on that.
Yeah, Candyman's out. We said we got Reminiscence, The Protege, Together, a bunch of stuff. I doubt we'll get to all of them, but there's a bunch of stuff there. So I think that's all we got right now, guys. Thank y'all for watching. See you later.
All right, y'all. You have a good day.